Thank you very much, Program Director, and a warm sincere greetings to the ministers present here today and fellow panelists. And let me greet you all in your eminence, just to indicate that we are also as South Africa in the midst of hosting our second iteration of the Green Hydrogen Conference. And this year, the focus really is on tangible projects that have been progress towards the next stages of the project life cycle, which stems from the initial conversation that we had during our inaugural conference. But we also are trying to understand what I refer to the political economy of energy as it manifests itself on the African continent. And as we grapple with the opportunities around green hydrogen, we seek to resolve what I refer to as a preeminent question of the energy complex on the continent and the political economy of energy on the continent. And we also are alive to the fact that this conversation around green hydrogen occurs against the backdrop of two major occurrences. The first one is the fact that Africa has got the least amount of energy penetration amongst all the continents in the world. We see hydrogen as an opportunity of energy penetration and gets much closer to universal access. And the second one is the frequency of occurrence of extreme weather conditions. And we also note that is devastating poor communities and the continent the most compared to other parts of the world because they are more industrialized and therefore they are able to develop the kind of infrastructure that is required. So make the point that we need to have a Pan-African view in the exploitation of this energy carrier. And our view is that by 2040, Africa can produce up to 50 times more energy from renewables than the world's estimated demand. And this is as a result of our location advantages. I think we have some of the best irradiation levels of any parts of the world, and we also have some of the best wind speeds along the coastal areas. And I think that also this helps us to accelerate the issues around universal access so that we are able to address the dimension of also using the carrier that is green hydrogen. And we think that it's going to help us to ensure that we address the issues of energy security from an affordability point of view. Because as we expand, I think there's a need for us to ensure that the far and remote areas, the most downtrodden and excluded communities also have access to this energy source. And then we think that it is important that in the conversation around the potential on green hydrogen, we confront what essentially is an objective inherent risk associated with the exploitation of this resource. And that is the strain that is putting on our water resources. And there's a rich body of literature that suggests that coastal countries can use seawater to produce green hydrogen and therefore eliminating the strain that is likely going to place on limited water resources, especially countries like South Africa, where water is a scarce community, and essentially we are a water deficit country. And we also do anticipate that sub-Saharan Africa has a capacity to produce anything between 5,000 to about 13,000 million tons per year of green hydrogen. And we think that could come at about $2 per kilogram, and essentially by 2050, and therefore making green hydrogen financially competitive compared to other energy sources. And the third area, in addition to a Pan-African view, South Africa determining its own standards, the degree of collaboration and cooperation, and also the issues of ensuring that we balance the scarcity of some of these resources, and I did mention water. I think it's important that we are able to industrialize on the back of this resource. So essentially, we are able to ensure that as we decarbonize, as we transition, we are able to provide Africa's own interpretation of what constitutes a just transition. And my view is that we've got an opportunity to define a just energy transition with African characteristics. And in this instance, it's about universal access, the exploitation of critical minerals that are key to the development of green hydrogen and realizing its potential. And you can see that by smelting African iron ore locally, we are likely going to create much needed jobs and therefore the skills that are required to support that transition. And in that way, in addition to broadening the industrial base, we are really getting people in good quality jobs. And of course, this is in addition to the decarbonization agenda, the fact that we'll likely reduce the emission by up to 110 million tons of carbon equivalent per year. And I did make the point that it could also contribute significantly to the national revenue funds of many of African countries of up to 20 billion US dollars. And that can be distributed to ensure that we are able to expand on social infrastructure, improve the quality of lives of our people, and ensure that we put Africa on a pedestal for significant growth going into the future. And just the last point to be made as just trying to bring it home, and this conversation is also applicable to many other jurisdictions on the continent, is that we are looking to approach about $1 per kilogram of green hydrogen by 2050. And like I said, this is likely going to make it competitive and equivalent to indigenous low-cost energy. And this can make us very competitive, I think, as a continent going into the future. But of course, as a start, we think that exports are going to be a major part of green hydrogen potential, because the major industrialized and developed countries of the North are likely going to be prepared to pay a price premium. So that's the first part. And with the maturity of the technology, the cost curve will come down. And we're going to ensure that some of the industries that they've located here, that having some of the industrialized North Western countries as their major jurisdiction, as their major markets, will survive and thrive on those markets on the back of green hydrogen, because we do anticipate that the introduction of carbon border adjustment mechanisms can undermine the competitiveness of these industries and their ability to exploit those markets as a result of CBAM. And we think that the green hydrogen will likely help us to address that situation. And the last point to be made is that we're sitting on some of the most renowned deposit of platinum groups of metals, and we can use those because, I mean, if you look at the automotive sector, we are moving from an internal combustion engine, we are looking at other sources of propulsion. And what that means is that the African markets are going to lose out as a result of the scaling down of internal combustion engines, because PGMs are a major source of the production of internal combustion engine, and therefore some of those jobs are at great risk. Our ability to earn revenue on the back of these PGMs is going to be threatened. So if we diversify or go the direction of green hydrogen, we are still going to use these PGMs. And I think that the potential displacement of employment as a result of the toning down or reduction of internal combustion engine will be replaced by the opportunities that present on the green hydrogen front. And if you like, the calculus, if anything, is going to be positive, the net going into the future. So we really see green hydrogen as the future of this continent, and that's why we are coordinating our efforts. Some of the major players in the space on the African continent, we have formed the Africa Green Hydrogen Alliance so that we get to agree on the standards, we get to agree on the approach, we are not pitted against each other. We see this is a corridor development, we see the complex that is presented by these opportunities, so that Africa's time has arrived, and this is the time, and green hydrogen provides a pristine opportunity for us to realize our potential. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Indeed, Africa's time has arrived, And right now, to join us on the podium, please welcome Mr. Ashutosh Singh, Head of Energy Transition, S&P